Hello, welcome to our channel. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for coming. We bring you the news. Unlike any other channel, we bring you the whole news, nothing but the news, without any interpretation. And we're not paid by the Department of War like 95% of the conservative people out there, like Glenn Beck, Alex Jones, etc., etc. They're paid by the Department of War. And they can only bring up what they're told to bring up. We are not paid by the Department of War. They won't even retire me because I speak the truth. Go Hegseth. Anyway, this is brought to you. Trump avoids the Super Bowl as he strikes a $12 trillion deal with Russia. Unbelievable. Trump is just out there bringing in money. So this is brought to you by Get the Tea Apple Cider Vinegar. Think about it. Apple cider vinegar does the same thing Ozempic does. I know people on Ozempic that aren't losing weight. Except their liver's stressed, their kidneys are stressed, they could face heart failure, they could go blind, their stomach is slowing down. What a bunch of negative effects, and yet Get the Tea's Apple Cider Plus, no negative side effects according to the National Institutes of Health. So I'm going to follow their instructions and use Apple Cider Plus. I haven't really used it, I've just repeated what the National Institutes of Health have said. And on to the news. There is no way anybody's going to start a business in Tacoma. Not if you have to pay a $758 power bill for a 2,400 square foot home. There's no way. There's just, with a 50% graduation rate and you have to pay 2% property taxes, so on a $500,000 house, you have to pay $10,000 a year, which is higher than the mortgage you started 25 years ago. There's no way anybody's going to move to Tacoma or Seattle or any other place. Amazon's moving out. Weyerhaeuser has left the state. Boeing headquarters has left the state. They're all leaving the state because the libtards have driven them away. But that's their goal. Lie, cheat, steal, and destroy. That's why the CIA appointed these governors. That's why Trump can't arrest them, because they're appointed by the CIA. He won't allow them to arrest them for sending $1 trillion overseas to the Democrats and the terrorists around the world. Trump can't stop it. He won't stop it. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, on to the news. Silver. We're not going to discuss silver very much, except they're really suppressing it. There is a shortage of silver. There is a shortage of copper. There is a shortage of gold right now. There is no silver. The U.S. mints and the Indian mints aren't printing silver coins. You know where it's going? Underground. Massive build out. All this AI, the money is going to build the underground cities. They feel that this coming anomaly is going to wipe out the surface population. And the Rothschilds' contract's over, and they're not going to renew it because the Rothschilds were told that they need to honor their contract for it to be renewed, and they didn't. They ignored AA-29, and they know exactly what AA-29. I'm just going to remind you, in your original contract, St. Petersburg, the Vela Monastery, Duke of St. Petersburg, you did none of that. Russia knew exactly what they were doing when they gave that passport away. They knew that the Rothschilds didn't have the mental capability to honor that contract, so the contract will be null and void very soon. The UN thinks it will be null and void when we come around and come up and the magnetic anomaly blasts the planet Earth. In fact, they just made a comment. The Lucifer Trust just made a comment. We're all going to face this destruction here in a few months. So we'll see if Lucifer's right. Trump's calling for a day of prayer on the 17th of May, but by then, who knows what'll happen. Already, Oroville Dam, the Feather River, is opening up, and the water is draining into the agricultural fields. Thermalito Bay, which is, there's Oroville Dam and Thermalito Bay, and when you have more than 20% of the power in the power lines, you pump water uphill, and if it's less than 20%, you run it downhill to produce power. Thermalito Bay and Oroville were built as a giant dam for the California Electrical Project, Pacific Gas and Electric, before the CIA BlackRock took over. They actually had a decent power water system before BlackRock took over and decided to destroy. Lie, cheat, steal, and murder. That's what the CIA motto is. Bring in the drugs. Cocaine Import Agency. Anyway, can you tell I love them? So, as the Mississippi River gets scoured, because they channelized it, it's scoured, took all the mud layer out, and now it's seeping into the local agricultural land we've destroyed by destroying the water wells. Now Oroville Dam is beginning to, the Feather River is beginning to move because the sun has changed because of this magnetic anomaly. And as the sun changes, the earth moves to and fro like this, and it begins to crack, and now Oroville Dam is seeping into the agricultural fields. It's not a water shortage, it's things are cracking. Oh man, there was something like 7 mudslides on Highway 1 in California. They're too stupid to put in drainage pipes. I've always noted, I've driven up and down Highway 1 2, 3 times. Half Moon Bay, the whole works. And they have no drainage pipes. So the mud or the calcium is washed out for the acid rain, and the calcium holds things in place. It's just like melting ice cream. Wiped out Highway 1, 7 different places. It's going to cost them somewhere around $500 million to repair it, and they're too stupid to put in drainage pipes. And they're too stupid to put calcium on the soil to harden it. They're just not mentally there. I don't know what they train these road engineers to do, but as a soil scientist, it isn't hard to figure out. Anyway, the military contractor openly admitted to using ticks as biological weapons. They purposely, as a contractor, put Rocky Mountain spotted fever in these ticks, one of the diseases I was exposed to in California while I was walking across the mountains on my own. Took my motorcycle up there, parked my motorcycle, shot a compass, and went. I think I was 18 years old. Came back with Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Well, the contractor admitted, and he admitted Lyme's disease was used now. This is all through the Department of Agriculture, the Department of War, and the Department of Agriculture. And now the Department of Agriculture is forcing mRNA shots on pigs and cattle, and they're dropping over dead. Cattle herds are the lowest they've been in 40, 50 years, actually. The Department of Agriculture has killed millions of cows and pigs and sheep. Why? To get their jollies off. They're frickin' freaks. Why they don't defund the Department of Agriculture is beyond my wildest imagination. Pray that the Department of Agriculture goes away, and that Arthur Daniel Midland breaks up, and that BlackRock breaks up. I'm here to tell you, BlackRock, you and your other Rothschild friends, like Kamala Harris, a Rothschild, I'm here to tell you that your contract will not be renewed because you have forgotten because you've forgotten what it says. You've forgotten what it says. That you can time travel, you have the Starship Enterprise, the original 1969 Enterprise, you have all that technology. You've forgotten what the original contract says with Satan. Yet he hasn't forgotten. He has a copy of it. And you failed to honor it. So because you failed to honor it, it won't be renewed. Anyway, Super Bowl, what a mess. I call it the Stupid Bowl. I don't know anybody in it. When they sold the Raiders, the local hometown dissolved. Now it's all bidding for players. It's not bringing local people up through a junior college and through a college, and you get to know them, and then they go play. So you rally for them because you knew them, because you encountered them, the bouncers from the bar at UC Berkeley. They put them through Diablo Valley Junior College, then UC Berkeley, then into the Oakland Raiders. I knew a lot of guys like that. Then they sold it to Los Angeles. I lost it. I don't ever want to see another football game again. But we went to see the Stupid Bowl. Seattle Seahawks beat the New England Patriots 29-7. The New England Patriots just sort of gave up. But NBC sponsored it. Now, ABC, CBS, Comcast, and Netflix, if you add up their debt, is over $2 trillion. $2 trillion. NBC alone is over $540 billion of debt. So NBC alone has to borrow $60 billion a year just to stay afloat. So the Federal Reserve System gives the bank $60 billion that lends it to NBC. And that's the mouthpiece of Satan, ABC, NBC, CBS. The mouthpiece of the deep state, the mouthpiece of the Rothschilds who answer to Lucifer, who we call Satan, who is the devil. So they answer to the devil. And Trump doesn't have the guts to shut off the Federal Reserve System. He can't shut off the Federal Reserve System. It's all underground. It consists of one wall. The entire building is done. Every government agency, every government department that's large is underground. That's why silver and gold prices are going up. They're sticking it all underground. Trillions being spent on the AI? No, it's not. It's being spent underground because they expect us to die in June. That's why Trump postponed the day of prayer till May 17th, because we're all supposed to die a month later. There's supposed to be magnetic anomalies and earthquakes and hurricanes. We're going to find out what God allows, aren't we? So the feds are kicking down over $1 trillion a year. We, the American public, that $1 trillion is pumped into the economy. Prices skyrocket. It's what they're spraying on us. We can't even get HCF to stop the 55th and 60th Air Wing from spraying on us because HCF worships Lucifer. That's why he won't retire me. Mad Dog Maddox gave the order. He was the head of the Department of Defense. The second director of the Department of Defense ordered my retirement. But I refuse to worship Lucifer. And Rothschild refuses to honor their contract, so we're kind of like this. Because the Rothschilds won't honor their contract, so their contract's being pulled. It's not too long until the Rothschilds lose everything. So anyway, the halftime... I'm sorry, it's what they're spraying on us. The halftime was a disaster. It was a Mexican guy grabbing his hoochie hooch going... and saying, we're all one, we're all one. In other words, speaking in Spanish. In other words, we live in a conquered country that has to learn to speak Spanish. That was the message, and that was all sponsored by NBC, which is sponsored by the Federal Reserve System, which makes money out of nothing. Gives it to the banks like JP Morgan. They give it to NBC, CBS, PBS, and all those. I think PBS is shutting down all those worthless organizations. Ford, General Motors, Toyota, they just pummel them with money so they can make cars that are computer boxes. So every time you burp, it's recorded, sent to the Ohio computer, then sent to China and 12 other nations. The automobile industry, the news media industry, everything is supported with a lifeline from the Federal Reserve System. And Trump, without God, can't stop that. He doesn't have God. His prayers go right to the floor because he's ignored what God wanted him to do. So his prayers just fall on the ground. Anyway, yeah, apparently the Rothschilds have the ability to see the future, and they glow sometimes well, I do too. Now, whether the Mount and the Applegate line are, Mount is obviously the line of the King of England. So whether they're the Rothschilds or not, I don't know. But Russia knew exactly what they were doing when they gave me passport AA-29, because they knew I wouldn't compromise. You tell the truth to Putin's staff, you don't go home. You must always tell the truth, because if you don't... Anyway, so while the Super Bowl was playing, it was a good game, I guess. I haven't watched the game since Seattle played the 49ers in their first game. I went to that game in the stadium, and it was exciting. That was before they sold the Oakland Raiders. Anyway, Trump is on Air Force One, going to Russia, negotiating with Vladimir Aleskiev, a three-star general. He's negotiating a $12 trillion trade deal where they build a train between Russia and the United States, a bridge. They have minerals, we have minerals, we have an economic base, they have an economic base. They have 140 million people, we have almost 400 million people, including the illegals. So striking a deal between the two nations is right on. So he met with Vladimir Aleskiev, and then Zelensky ordered Vladimir Zelensky, the chief negotiator for Russia, to be assassinated. So he's going into his apartment, they blow him away. They caught the person who assassinated him, and he admitted everything. So while Trump is negotiating greater finances for the United States, Zelensky kills the chief negotiator. I don't know what Trump's response will be, but I know what Russia's response was. They pummeled, it's 10 degrees in Kiev right now, and most of their power's out. They pummeled every substation they could find. There is no power in Kiev. They've got emergency power lights lit. They've knocked out the substations leaving the nuclear reactors. They've knocked out the substations leaving the coal and oil-powered electrical plants. And the solar doesn't work when it's cloudy out, and if it's snowing, there's no wind. So while this renewable energy is great, if you have Oroville Dam and Thermalito Bay, and the sun's out, and you're producing 30-40% excess power, you can pump it uphill. But if you don't have that giant two-tiered dam like Las Vegas has, in the daytime they pump water uphill, and at night they run the dams, and the dams flow downhill and power Las Vegas. If you don't have that giant battery, then solar and wind is worthless, frickin' worthless. Anyway, I know I have solar. So anyway, it's 10 degrees in Kiev, and they have no power. We need to pray for the people of Kiev, that their insane leaders stop this insane war, and that they follow the original 1991 treaty and give the states that voted to rejoin Russia back to Russia. That they stop lie, cheat, steal, and murdering so that they can pad their pocket with a percentage of the money the United States just generously give them $10 billion a month. So if you're working, you're sending the Ukraine $100 million a year so that 90% of that can be stolen. And 10% go into weapons. They're out of missiles, they're out of artillery shells, they're out of ammo. The reason Russia doesn't take all of Ukraine is because they don't want to. Plain and simple. Anyway, God bless. Thank you very much. We appreciate each and every one of you. Pray for Trump that he makes the right decisions, because his prayers are falling on the ground right now. That's what God showed me. His prayers are falling on the ground. He needs to do what God asked him to do, and then God would listen to him. And then he would have a way to stop the war in the Ukraine, stop the war in Burma, stop the war in the Congo. God would show him the way to rebuild the American economy. But until he does what God asks him to do, his prayers are just falling on the ground. God bless. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow.